You can tell a lot about a man by how he treats someone he believes has no power. The sound of metal cuffs snapping shut echoed across the marble lobby like a gunshot no one expected. Conversations died mid-sentence. Coffee cups paused halfway to lips. High above them, sunlight poured through 40 feet of glass, turning the polished floor into a mirror that reflected every shocked face in the room. Officer Daniel Mercer stood tall in the center of it all, one hand resting near his belt, the other gripping the wrist of a woman dressed in a charcoal coat and low heels. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't resisted. She hadn't even flinched when he locked the cuffs around her wrists. Monica Hayes simply stood there, shoulders straight, eyes calm, as if the humiliation belonged to someone else. "I asked you 3 times for identification," Mercer barked, making sure everyone heard him. "You ignored lawful instructions and attempted to access a restricted elevator." A few people near the reception desk exchanged glances. They had seen what really happened. She had shown a card. He had barely looked at it. But truth gets quiet when authority speaks loudly enough. Monica's leather tote sat on the floor beside her feet, tipped on its side, a notebook peeking out from the opening. No stolen items. No weapons. No threat. Just papers, keys, and a silver pen. Still, Mercer wore the confident smirk of a man certain the room was on his side. The young receptionist said carefully, voice trembling, "There may be some misunderstanding." Mercer turned his head without moving the rest of his body. "Then stay behind your desk and let police work happen." The receptionist fell silent. Around them, phones slowly rose into the air. People always pretend they're recording injustice for noble reasons. Most are just hoping to witness the moment someone breaks. Monica didn't give them that satisfaction. She lifted her cuffed hand slightly and glanced at the brushed steel elevator doors across the lobby. Closed. Still. Waiting. "Officer," she said, voice low and measured, "you're making a mistake." Mercer laughed under his breath. "Funny. That's exactly what people say when they get caught." He reached for her tote and set it upright with the toe of his shoe. "You don't belong on the executive floor. That elevator is for tenants, owners, and authorized personnel." A murmur moved through the crowd. Some faces showed discomfort. Others showed the dangerous pleasure of watching someone else be embarrassed. Monica's gaze never left the elevator. "How long have you worked this assignment?" she asked. Mercer frowned. "Long enough to know when someone's lying." "That wasn't my question." The lobby air seemed to tighten. Even the revolving doors at the entrance slowed as new arrivals stepped in and sensed something they couldn't name. Mercer straightened. "You people always think rules don't apply to you." The words landed heavier than he intended, hanging in the bright open space where no one could pretend not to hear them. A man in a navy suit quietly stepped backward. An older woman near the concierge desk lowered her eyes. Monica finally looked at Mercer directly. There was no fear in her expression. No anger either. Just something far worse for a man like him. Certainty. She glanced at the gold watch on her wrist, the one he had somehow missed while cuffing her. 30 seconds, she said. Mercer smirked wider. 30 seconds until what? Monica said nothing. Somewhere above them, machinery hummed to life. The executive elevator began its descent. The digital numbers above the elevator changed one floor at a time. 32. 31. 30. Each soft chime sounded louder than it should have, like the building itself was counting down to something only one person in the room understood. Officer Daniel Mercer folded his arms and rocked back on his heels, enjoying the attention. "Nice trick," he said. "Trying to act mysterious does not change the fact that you ignored a police order." Monica Hayes stood motionless, her cuffed hands resting lightly in front of her. The silver chain of the restraints caught the morning light, but even that looked temporary on her, like a costume piece placed on the wrong person. "You still have time to correct this," she said. Mercer gave a short laugh. "I am not the one who needs correcting." Near. The reception desk, the young clerk discreetly reached for the phone again. Her name tag read Tara, and her fingers shook as she dialed an internal extension. "Please answer," she whispered. Across the lobby, a maintenance worker paused with a mop in hand. A courier near the revolving doors forgot to leave. Everyone sensed the same thing now. This was no longer about a misunderstanding. It was about what happens when pride refuses to listen. 28. 27. Mercer looked around at the gathering crowd and straightened his uniform shirt. "For the record," he announced, projecting his voice like he was speaking at a press conference, "this property has had multiple security incidents. We do not allow unauthorized access." Monica tilted her head slightly. Interesting choice of words. What words? We. Some people in the crowd tried not to smile. Mercer noticed and his jaw tightened. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think you are clever?" "No," Monica replied. "I think you are careless." The words landed clean and sharp. No shouting. No insult. Just truth delivered at room temperature. 24. 23. Tara finally reached someone. "Mr. Collins," she said in a rush, "you need to come down now. Right now." "It is Ms. Hayes." Mercer's eyes snapped toward her. "Hang up the phone." Tara froze. Monica did not even turn. "Let her finish," she said quietly. Mercer ignored her and moved toward the desk, but before he took a second step, the head of lobby security entered through a side corridor. Franklin Reed was broad-shouldered, gray-haired, and known in the building for never hurrying. Today he was nearly jogging. He took one look at Monica in handcuffs and stopped so suddenly his shoes squeaked against the stone floor. "Officer," Franklin said carefully, "remove those restraints." Mercer squared his shoulders. "Back off. This is police business." Franklin's eyes did not leave Monica. "No. This is building business." A ripple passed through the crowd. Phones lifted higher. Mercer pointed toward the security guard. "You are interfering." Franklin inhaled slowly, the kind of breath a man takes before saying something that changes the room. But Monica spoke first. "Not yet." Franklin fell silent immediately. That single exchange did more damage to Mercer's confidence than any argument could have. Authority recognizes authority long before titles are spoken. 20. 19. The elevator continued descending. Mercer looked from Monica to Franklin to the faces around him. For the first time since the cuffs clicked shut, uncertainty touched his expression. "Who exactly are you?" he asked. Monica met his eyes. "Someone who gave you every chance to ask that question earlier." 18. 17. The lobby doors opened again and two attorneys in dark suits hurried inside carrying folders. Behind them came a woman from corporate communications, then a man from human resources, all moving with the same destination in mind. They did not glance at Mercer. They looked only at Monica. 16. 15. Mercer swallowed hard. "What is this?" he demanded, though the confidence had drained from his voice. Monica glanced once more at the glowing numbers above the elevator. "Consequences," she said. The car reached the lobby level with a soft mechanical ding. The elevator doors slid open so quietly that the silence around them felt louder. 5 people stepped out first, each dressed in the kind of tailored confidence money teaches well. Then came a 6th figure, older, silver-haired, carrying a leather portfolio against his chest. Last to emerge was a tall man in a navy suit whose face had appeared more than once in business magazines stacked across waiting rooms in the city. Jonathan Collins, Chief Executive Officer of Hayes Urban Properties, moved forward with the focused speed of someone who had been interrupted by news too serious to ignore. His eyes found Monica immediately. Then he saw the handcuffs. He stopped cold. "Who did this?" he asked. No one answered. Even the air conditioning seemed to hesitate. Officer Daniel Mercer cleared his throat and stepped forward. "Sir, this woman attempted unauthorized access to the executive level and refused lawful instruction. Situation is under control." Collins turned slowly toward him, and the look in his eyes carried none of the warmth polished executives usually perform. "Under control," he repeated. He glanced back at Monica. "Ms. Hayes, are you all right?" Around the lobby, people exchanged startled looks. The title alone changed the room. "Ms. Hayes." Not ma'am. Not lady. Not suspect. Mercer blinked. "You know her?" Collins stared at him in disbelief. "Know her?" He took one measured step closer. "Officer, this company exists because of her." A whisper swept through the crowd like wind through dry leaves. Phones rose higher. Someone near the doors muttered, "No way." Mercer looked at Monica, then at the group surrounding her with concern. "There has to be some mistake." Monica lifted her cuffed hand slightly. "Yes," she said. "There has been one all morning." Collins extended his hand toward Franklin Reed. "Keys." Franklin handed over a small ring without speaking. Collins personally unlocked the restraints, his movements careful and deliberate. When the cuffs came free, the sound of metal opening felt heavier than when they closed. Monica rubbed one wrist once, then lowered her hands. No dramatics. No speech. Just composure restored to its rightful owner. Mercer's face lost color. "No one identified her," he said quickly. "She did," Tara replied before fear could stop her. Every head turned toward the receptionist. Her voice shook, but she continued. "She presented access credentials. You refused to look." Mercer opened his mouth, then closed it. Collins exhaled slowly through his nose. "Officer Mercer, meet Monica Hayes. Founder. Majority owner. Chairwoman of this building, this company, and the redevelopment district 3 blocks in every direction." The words hit one by one, each heavier than the last. Mercer glanced around for support and found none. Even those who had enjoyed the spectacle minutes earlier now studied the floor. Monica picked up her tote, straightened the strap on her shoulder, and looked at him with the same calm she had shown from the start. "You saw a black woman near an elevator," she said. "And you filled in the rest with assumptions." Mercer tried to recover his voice. "I was following procedure." "No," Monica replied. "You were following instinct. That is what should concern you." Behind Collins, one of the attorneys opened a folder and handed documents to corporate communications. Another quietly asked Franklin for surveillance footage timestamps. Human resources took notes, though no one had said a word to them yet. The machinery of consequence had begun to move, and unlike pride, it rarely paused once started. Mercer shifted his stance. "I did not mean any disrespect." Monica gave a faint, almost sad smile. Disrespect does not always announce itself. Sometimes it wears confidence and calls itself policy. The lobby fell silent again, but it was a different silence now. Not the silence of spectators waiting for humiliation. The silence of witnesses realizing they had just watched truth change clothes. Collins stepped aside and gestured toward the elevator. "Board meeting in 5 minutes, Ms. Hayes." Monica nodded, then paused beside Mercer. "Next time," she said softly enough that everyone still heard it, "ask who belongs before deciding who does not." Then she walked toward the open elevator, and the crowd parted long before she reached it. The elevator doors closed behind Monica Hayes with the quiet certainty of a vault ceiling shut. For several seconds, no one moved. The polished lobby that had buzzed with whispers only minutes earlier now stood frozen beneath its own reflection. Officer Daniel Mercer remained in the center of the floor, shoulders squared out of habit more than confidence, staring at the empty space where she had stood. It is a strange thing when power leaves a room. The people who borrowed courage from it often do not know what to do next. Jonathan Collins broke the silence first. "Franklin, preserve every camera angle from the last 30 minutes. "Already done," Franklin Reed replied. Tara, send me the call log and front desk report. Tara nodded quickly. Her hands no longer shook. Collins then turned to Mercer. And you will remain here. The words were calm, but calm from the right person can feel heavier than shouting. Mercer swallowed. With respect, sir, you do not supervise law enforcement. No, Collins said. But I supervise this property, our contracts, and every security agreement tied to your department's private detail program. He let that settle. Today, those worlds overlap. Two uniformed officers entered through the revolving doors at that exact moment, summoned by radio chatter and curiosity. They saw Mercer standing rigid, saw Collins, saw the attorneys, saw the crowd still filming, and instantly understood that something had gone wrong in a very public way. Officer Mercer, one of them said carefully, Lieutenant Perez needs you on Channel 3. Mercer reached for his radio, then stopped when Collins added, "You speaker." Mercer hesitated. Pride and fear wrestled across his face. Fear won. He pressed the button. Mercer here. Lieutenant Elena Perez came through sharp and clear. Daniel, tell me I am hearing bad information. He glanced around the lobby. There was a misunderstanding. No, Perez replied, voice cold enough to cool the room. A misunderstanding is getting the wrong parking level. You detained a private citizen without cause in front of half the city. Some people in the crowd lowered their phones, suddenly aware they were witnessing more than gossip. They were witnessing accountability. Mercer tried again. She entered a restricted area. Franklin spoke before Collins could. She authorized the restricted area. A few people laughed softly. Mercer closed his eyes for 1 second too long. Perez heard everything she needed in the silence. Badge and building access card, she said. Effective immediately, you are relieved pending review. Mercer's hand dropped slowly from the radio. Lieutenant, with respect, save it for internal affairs. The line went dead. No dramatic music played. No crowd cheered. Real consequences are often quieter than revenge. They arrive in paperwork, in policy, in a voice that no longer sounds impressed by you. Mercer unclipped his access card and set it in his palm as if seeing it for the first time. One of the responding officers stepped forward with awkward sympathy. Daniel. Mercer handed over the card and badge without speaking. Tara looked down, then looked back up stronger than before. The maintenance worker resumed mopping, though he smiled this time. Life has a way of continuing once. Arrogance is removed from the hallway. Collins adjusted his cufflinks and addressed the room. For anyone recording, our company will release a statement after review. For anyone who works here, remember this moment. Titles matter less than conduct. He turned toward the elevators, then paused beside Mercer. You were so certain she did not belong, he said quietly. That certainty cost you more than caution ever would have. Collins walked away. The attorneys followed. Franklin returned to his station. The crowd began to disperse, carrying coffee, bags, and a fresh story they would tell all week. Mercer stood alone in the middle of the shining floor, surrounded by glass walls that reflected him from every angle. Minutes earlier he had felt like the largest man in the room. Now even his reflection looked smaller. Above him, the digital numbers changed again as the executive elevator descended from the top floor. Monica Hayes was coming back down. The elevator arrived with the same soft chime, but this time the sound carried a different weight. People who had started to leave slowed their steps. Those near the doors turned back. Even the officers by the entrance straightened instinctively. When the doors opened, Monica Hayes stepped out alone. No attorneys. No executives. No entourage. Just Monica, carrying the same leather tote, posture steady, expression unreadable. The room made space for her without being asked. That is how real authority often moves. It does not push. It is recognized. Officer Daniel Mercer remained where he stood, badge surrendered, hands empty at his sides. He looked as though he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Monica walked across the marble floor at an unhurried pace, each step measured, each heel click echoing through the lobby that had once treated her like an interruption. She stopped a few feet from him. No one spoke. There are moments when an entire room becomes an audience without meaning to. Mercer lowered his eyes first. "Miss Hayes," he said quietly, struggling to find a tone that sounded sincere, "I owe you an apology." Monica studied him for a moment. "For what part?" she asked. He blinked. "I handled the situation poorly." "That is language people use when they want distance from what they did," she replied. "Try again." Mercer swallowed. Around them, no phone cameras were raised now. This was no longer spectacle. It was instruction. "I judged you before I knew anything about you," he said. "I assumed you did not belong here." Monica nodded once. "Closer." He drew a slow breath. "I treated you differently because of how you looked." The truth sat in the center of the room, plain and unadorned. Some truths enter quietly and still manage to shake walls. Monica's gaze did not harden. It softened, which somehow made the moment harder for him. "Do you know what the dangerous part is?" she asked. Mercer said nothing. "You thought you were being professional." He had no answer because she was right. Franklin Reed looked down at his shoes. Tara stood behind the desk with tears in her eyes she did not fully understand. Monica continued, her voice calm enough to carry farther than shouting ever could. "Bias is easy to condemn when it is loud. It is harder to confront when it sounds like policy, procedure, instinct, experience." She glanced around the lobby, including everyone in the lesson. "That is how it survives." Mercer finally looked up. "I never wanted to be that kind of person." "Most people do not," Monica said. "That is why self-examination matters more than self-image." The words landed across the room like stones dropped into still water. Collins had reappeared near the side corridor and now watched in silence. The two responding officers stood respectfully back. No one interrupted. Monica reached into her tote and removed a folded set of blueprints, edges worn from use. She handed them to Mercer. Confused, he accepted them. "Do you know what those are?" she asked. He glanced down. "Building plans." "Original plans," Monica said. "I bought this property when most investors called this neighborhood a lost cause. The roof leaked. Half the windows were boarded up. People said no one of value would come here." Her eyes held his. "I heard that kind of sentence before." Mercer stared at the drawings, suddenly understanding that walls can be rebuilt more easily than habits. "Why are you showing me this?" he asked. Monica answered without hesitation. "Because structures can be renovated. So can people, if they choose to do the work." She stepped back. "Your review process is not my decision. What happens next professionally belongs to others. What happens next personally belongs to you." Mercer's fingers tightened around the blueprints. For the first time all morning, he looked less defensive than human. Monica turned to leave, then paused beside him. "Do not waste this humiliation," she said softly. "It cost too much." She walked toward the revolving doors as sunlight spilled across the floor in front of her. The room remained silent until she passed through them. Then everyone breathed again. By noon, the lobby had returned to its usual rhythm. Shoes crossed marble. Elevators opened and closed. Delivery carts rolled past polished columns. The fountain near the west wall whispered the same steady sound it always had, as if buildings themselves prefer to forget what happens inside them. But people do not forget so easily. They carried the morning with them in lowered voices, in exchanged looks, in the careful way they now greeted one another. Officer Daniel Mercer sat alone in a small administrative office on the ground floor, waiting for internal affairs to arrive. His uniform shirt was still pressed, but it no longer fit him the same way. Sometimes clothing changes when certainty leaves the body wearing it. The folded blueprints Monica Hayes had given him rested on the desk in front of him. He had opened them 3 times already. Old paper, faded ink, handwritten notes in the margins. A coffee stain near one corner. Pencil marks where walls had once been moved. It was not just a map of a building. It was evidence that something neglected had been seen, invested in, and transformed. Mercer traced one line with his finger. Lobby expansion. Accessibility ramp added. Community retail spaces. Child care center on level 2. He had worked private security details here for 18 months and never knew any of that existed. He had guarded the entrance without learning the story of what stood behind it. A soft knock came at the door. Lieutenant Elena Perez entered carrying a thin folder. She was in her 40s, composed in the way only experienced leaders become after years of cleaning up other people's mistakes. She closed the door behind her and took the chair across from him. "How are you feeling?" she asked. Mercer almost laughed at the question. "Embarrassed." Perez nodded. "Good." He looked up sharply. She continued before he could speak. "Embarrassment means reality reached you. Some people never let it in." She placed the folder on the desk but did not open it. "I reviewed the footage." Mercer stared at the blueprints. "Then you know." "I know enough." Her tone stayed even. "You ignored identification, dismissed witnesses, escalated based on assumptions, and spoke in ways that dishonor this department." Each sentence was measured, neither cruel nor soft. Accountability rarely needs volume. Mercer rubbed his forehead. "I did not realize how I sounded." "That sentence is the root of the problem," Perez said. "Too many officers believe harm only counts when intended." The room fell quiet. Through the frosted glass, phones rang somewhere beyond the wall. Life continuing while one man reconsidered the shape of himself. Perez finally opened the folder. "Pending full review, you are suspended from field duty and reassigned to administrative training. Bias assessment, community relations, procedural retraining, counseling. Mandatory." Mercer expected anger in her voice. Instead he heard disappointment, and somehow that cut deeper. "Do you think I can come back from this?" he asked. Perez leaned back slightly. "Professionally? Maybe. Personally? That depends on whether you want your reputation back or your character repaired." She stood to leave, then noticed the blueprints. "What are those?" "She gave them to me," Mercer said. Perez studied the paper a moment. "Then she gave you more grace than you earned." After she left, Mercer sat alone again. He unfolded the plans fully across the desk. In one margin, written in neat black ink, was a sentence he had not noticed before: "Build spaces where people are treated with dignity before they enter the room." He read it twice. Then a third time. Outside, the office. Door opened once more. Tara stood there holding 2 cups of coffee. She looked nervous but steadier than she had that morning. "I figured you might need one," she said. Mercer blinked in surprise. "Why would you do that?" Tara handed him the cup. "Because somebody has to act better than what happened today." She left before he could answer. Mercer looked at the coffee, then at the handwriting on the blueprint, then at his own reflection in the dark computer monitor. For the first time in years, he did not see a badge first. He saw a man with work to do. 3 weeks later, rain traced thin silver lines down the windows of the city training center where new recruits and veteran officers sat in rows of mold plastic chairs. The room smelled of coffee, damp jackets, and the nervous patience that fills spaces where people expect lectures they do not want. At the front stood Lieutenant Elena Perez beside a projector screen that displayed 4 words in large blue letters: "Authority without awareness fails." Murmurs moved through the room when Officer Daniel Mercer entered from the side door carrying a folder and a stack of handouts. Some recognized him immediately. Others knew only the story, already passed through precinct halls and family dinner tables with the speed reserved for public humiliation. Mercer felt every glance land on him, but he did not turn away. Shame had once made him defensive. Now it simply made him honest. Perez spoke first. Today is not about punishment theater. It is about prevention. She looked across the room. You can learn from your own mistakes, or from someone else's. Wisdom chooses the cheaper option. A few recruits shifted in their seats. Mercer set the folders down and took his place near the podium. He no longer wore a duty belt. No badge shined on his chest. Just a plain department polo and the posture of a man learning humility one day at a time. Perez nodded once. Officer Mercer will begin. He stepped forward, throat dry. A month ago, I believed experience made my instincts trustworthy. He paused. I was wrong. Silence settled quickly. Real confession tends to quiet rooms faster than authority can. He clicked the remote. Security footage still images appeared on the screen, the lobby, the front desk, the elevator doors, himself standing too confidently in the center of each frame. He did not rush past them. I ignored identification because it contradicted what I assumed. I dismissed witnesses because they were inconvenient. I used procedure as cover for bias I had never examined. No one laughed. No one checked a phone. The room was listening now. Mercer continued. I thought prejudice looked like shouting slurs or obvious hatred. I did not understand it can also look calm, organized, and convinced it is being reasonable. Perez watched from the side with folded arms, saying nothing. She knew growth needs room to speak in its own voice. Mercer handed the first row a packet. Inside are questions I had to answer in counseling. Who do you trust instantly? Who do you doubt automatically? Whose anger do you label dangerous? Whose confidence do you call leadership? Chairs creaked as officers opened the pages. Some frowned. Others looked suddenly tired. The projector changed to another image, old blueprints of the Hayes building. These were given to me by the woman I mistreated, Mercer said. She could have given me nothing. Instead she gave me perspective. He pointed to a handwritten note enlarged on the screen, build spaces where people are treated with dignity before they enter the room. A young recruit raised his hand. Why would she help you after that? Mercer answered without hesitation. Because some people care more about changing systems than winning moments. The room absorbed that slowly. Rain tapped the windows harder now, a soft applause from the weather. Perez stepped forward. This department will make errors. Human beings always do. The issue is whether ego protects the error or integrity corrects it. She looked directly at the older officers in the back row. Rank does not exempt anyone from that choice. After the session ended, people filed out quieter than they entered. A few thanked Mercer. One avoided eye contact entirely. Another asked for the counselor's contact information. Small signs. Real change often arrives dressed as paperwork and awkward. Conversations. As Mercer gathered the leftover handouts, Perez approached him. You did well. He gave a faint smile. Still feels strange being the example. Perez picked up one of the blueprints from the table. Better to become an example on purpose than remain one by accident. She handed it back. Outside the training center, the rain had stopped. Across the street, reflected in a puddle, city lights trembled into clarity. By early autumn, the lobby looked different. Not because the marble had changed or the glass walls had moved, but because the people inside it carried themselves differently. A second reception desk had been added near the entrance with multilingual signage. Security staff now greeted visitors before questioning them. Clear access procedures were posted in plain view instead of hidden behind assumptions and hurried gestures. On the west wall, framed beneath soft lighting, hung a bronze plaque with one sentence engraved across it: "Dignity is the first credential." Most people slowed down when they passed it. Some smiled. Others looked thoughtful. Buildings can teach when people decide they should. Daniel Mercer noticed all of it the morning he returned. He wore a standard patrol uniform again, though the shine had gone from the way he carried it. He had completed retraining, counseling, and 6 weeks on restricted administrative duty. Reinstatement came with conditions, supervision, and no private contract assignments for the foreseeable future. It was not triumph. It was probation wrapped in a second chance. He entered through the revolving doors just after 8 o'clock, rainwater darkening the sidewalk behind him. Tara, now promoted to lead concierge, looked up and gave a measured nod. "Morning, Officer Mercer." He nodded back. "Morning, Tara." Respect now moved both directions. Franklin Reed stood near the security podium reviewing a clipboard. "You are early," Franklin said without looking up. "Trying something new," Mercer replied. Franklin glanced at him, then allowed the smallest smile. "Good strategy." The lobby was filling with commuters, attorneys, designers, maintenance crews, and delivery drivers. Different incomes, different backgrounds, same elevators. Mercer stood near the entrance not as a gatekeeper, but as support. He helped an elderly man find the accessible lift. He directed a courier to the freight entrance without impatience. He listened when a college intern said she was nervous on her first day and told her everyone feels that way in expensive buildings. Small acts. Nothing cinematic. But character is often rebuilt in inches. At 9:15, a black sedan pulled up outside. Franklin straightened slightly. Tara checked her monitor. The revolving doors turned, and Monica Hayes stepped inside carrying a portfolio case and wearing a navy coat against the weather. Conversation softened in the subtle way they always did when she entered. She acknowledged people by name as she crossed the floor. "Good morning, Tara." "Franklin." "Mrs. Alvarez, how is your grandson?" Power remembered details. Mercer felt his chest tighten as she approached. He had rehearsed possible words in his head for days and discarded every one of them. Monica stopped in front of him. For a brief second, the whole lobby seemed to notice without staring. "Officer Mercer," she said. "Miss Hayes." He kept his voice steady. "Welcome back." One corner of her mouth lifted. "It is my building. I tend to come often." A few nearby people smiled. Even Mercer did. She studied him for a moment. "How have you been using your second chance?" He answered honestly. "Trying to deserve it." Monica nodded slowly. "Good answer." She handed him a sealed envelope. His name was written neatly across the front. "What is this?" he asked. "Open it after your shift." She moved past him, then paused beside the bronze plaque. "I like where they placed it," she said to no one in particular. Collins emerged from the elevator bank and joined her as they headed upstairs. The lobby resumed its motion. Hours later, seated alone in the break room, Mercer opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note and a key card. The note read, "Community Youth Mentorship Center, Level 2. Saturday at 9. If you want to repair trust, start where it is being formed." Beneath the note was one final line, "Doors open easier when you learn how to hold them." For others. Mercer stared at the card for a long time. Then he looked through the break room window toward the lobby below, where strangers entered all day carrying stories no one could see. This time, he intended to notice. Saturday morning sunlight filled level 2 with a warm kind of light that makes old rooms feel hopeful. The Community Youth Mentorship Center had once been empty office space with stained carpet and forgotten furniture. Now the walls were painted in bright colors, shelves held books donated by local businesses, and folding tables were covered with robotics kits, art supplies, chess boards, and college brochures. Laughter moved through the room in quick bursts. Teenagers in hoodies, middle school students with backpacks, and volunteers carrying coffee cups created the kind of noise cities need more of. Officer Daniel Mercer stood near the doorway wearing jeans, a plain navy sweater, and an expression halfway between nervous and determined. Without the uniform, some people barely recognized him. Others did and watched carefully. Trust, once cracked, does not rush to heal. Tara waved from the registration table. You made it. Mercer held up a box of donuts. I was told never to arrive empty-handed. Smartest thing you have done all year, she said, taking the box. Franklin Reed was helping two boys assemble a bookshelf in the corner. Jonathan Collins adjusted a projector screen while pretending not to know how tools worked. The room carried an unexpected truth: titles become smaller when service becomes the point. Mercer scanned the center for Monica Hayes and found her kneeling beside a little girl who was frustrated with a tangled set of headphones. Monica untangled the cord with patient fingers, handed them back, and listened as if the child were presenting a business merger. When she stood, she noticed Mercer. "You are on time," she said. "Trying something newer," he answered. Monica handed him a stack of name tags. "Then start here." For the next hour he checked students in, directed parents toward coffee, and learned names instead of assumptions. Malik loved engineering. Sophia wanted to be a judge. Jamal asked too many questions for any room to stay lazy. A shy 8th grader named Naomi barely spoke until Mercer noticed the sketchbook under her arm. Inside were drawings of city buildings redesigned with rooftop gardens and playgrounds. "These are good," he said. Naomi shrugged. "People always say that." "No," Mercer replied gently. "These are good enough to build one day." She looked at him differently after that. Across the room Monica watched without interrupting. Later, during the career panel, a teenager in the back raised his hand. "Why should we trust cops?" The room went still. Some volunteers shifted uncomfortably. Mercer could have looked away. The old version of him might have. Instead he stood. "Sometimes you should not," he said. "Honest answers clear rooms faster than speeches. Trust is not owed because of a badge. It is earned by conduct, and some people fail that test." He glanced at Monica, then back to the students. "I failed it myself. The question is whether people can change after they are confronted by truth. I believe they can. But you do not have to take my word for it. Watch what they do next." No applause followed. None was needed. The students listened because authenticity sounds different from image management. After the panel, Naomi approached Monica and showed her the sketchbook. Monica smiled and handed her a business card. "Send these designs to my office when you are ready." The girl's eyes widened like sunrise. Noon arrived quietly. Parents gathered children. Volunteers stacked chairs. Crumbs and paper cups marked a successful morning. Mercer carried boxes toward storage when Monica joined him by the window overlooking the lobby below. People crossed the marble floor like pieces on a chessboard, each believing their destination was the whole story. "You understand now," Monica said. "Understand what?" he asked. She looked down at the entrance where strangers kept arriving. "Buildings are easy to own. You sign papers. Pay taxes. Maintain walls." She turned toward him. "The harder thing is owning your choices after they enter the world." Mercer nodded slowly. "And if you did damage?" Monica gave the faint smile he had come to recognize. "Then spend more time building than defending." She walked back into the center to help fold tables. Mercer remained by the glass, watching the lobby below. Months earlier he had mistaken authority for importance and control for respect. Now he knew better. Some people carry keys. Others become the door.